So I'll start off with the fact that as of January, you'll be employed by Counties Manukau Health, and your direct line manager at any point will be the service manager for the allocation that you'll be working in. However, throughout the year, you'll have an RMO advisor, and that, depending on which service you're in, that RMO advisor has delegated authority to do a lot of things on behalf of the service, such as covering shifts, approving leave, providing relief rosters. But there are obviously rules and criteria that need to be met, as they are not the actual line manager as recognised by the DHB. So some of those criteria that are the same across our services and relief pools are no more than 2 weeks per house officer per run. That will count for both PGY1s and PGY2s, and actually past that as well. There's a couple of reasons for that. Especially for PGY1s, that means that as you're required by Medical Council to complete a minimum of 10 weeks of your run, and most runs are 13 weeks, you can take 2 weeks leave, and then you have a 1 week buffer for sickness, or in this new COVID world, perhaps COVID stand down, and your run will still count. Relief cover must be available. So, we have surgical and medical relief pools, and RMO advisors only have the ability to approve leave for which leave cover is available. We do that approving of leave on a first come, first served basis, but we do take into account any reasons you might give us for the leave. So courses and special occasions, weddings, big family events, those sort of things, absolutely, we will look at those and we'll prioritise your leave application accordingly. Prior to roster publication, we can only approve full weeks because that helps us provide the reliever with a training value. There's nothing worse as a reliever to be allocated 3 different services in a single week because somebody has requested the Monday, somebody has requested the Thursday, Friday, and then there's that Tuesday, Wednesday on SNR, and they end up covering different services. But also continuity of care for the patients for all the same reasons. Prior to roster publication, we can only approve Christmas or New Year's. Now, if you happen to be really lucky, you might get Christmas and then have New Year's rostered off. Or after the roster is published, if we aren't using the relief coverage that we had expected to use, then we can approve both later on. But it's really until we get the roster that we can't make that decision. And you might notice that if you apply for the first week of the run, we cannot approve the Monday. What we will do is allocate a reliever to that Monday, but because you're last, we don't know whether you're working the last weekend of the run for your previous run, we can't approve that Monday until after roster publication. So it might look a bit odd. It's very unlikely it wouldn't be approved, but it's just a safeguard in terms of the abutting weekend when we're not sure whether we can cover. Does anybody have any questions so far, or shall I move on?
I had a quick question.
Sure.
So like 2022, 2023, Christmas and New Year, both like Christmas and New Year are on weekends. So like if we can we request to have the week off in between and potentially, and like if we don't really mind working New Year's or Christmas on the weekends, but have something during the week, can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will approve that weekend in between for as many people, the week in between for as many people as we have relievers for at this stage. It may just be that, and I'll go into the leave abutting weekend a little bit later on, but that we can't approve all the dates that you've requested until after roster publication, just so that we retain availability for one of the weekends.
Okay, so if we apply for that, do we just apply for the, like if we don't mind working the weekends, we can just apply for the 5 days either side, and then either we'll get it or we won't?
Yes, a little bit more complicated, but let me get to the leave abutting weekends slide, and perhaps that will answer your questions. Well, we'll answer why it's a little bit more complicated. Sorry.
Okay. Cool.
In this time that I've been at counties, or across the region really, I always get asked when leave is declined, well, why don't we just hire locums, or why don't we advertise out to locums? The problem with RMO locums is that, as you will know, as an RMO, you're in a training role. Therefore, if you're not permanently employed or in a full-time role, you're not progressing your training to end graduation as an SMO, which means that inherently there are very few people out there who are pure locums and not progressing their training. So it's very challenging for us to cover 8 till 4, Monday to Friday, with pure locums. The other thing is that even if you apply to us 6 months, 9 months in advance, and we don't have relief cover available, absolutely, we can go out to pure locums that we have at that point in time, and some may agree to pick up the shifts. But because those locums are on a casual contract, they have no obligation to work the shift. And so it's very likely that their personal circumstances will change within the 6 to 9 months leading up to the shifts, ultimately leading to the shift being vacant in the end. So it's not the cost. The cost is the same as additional duties, and often services will absolutely approve that cost. It's really the risk that those shifts will likely end up going vacant if we can't cover them within the relief pool. And the fact that there just aren't that many pure locums out there just by the nature of the role. So I thought I'd give you a quick look at what the roster looks like for us when we are looking to approve leave. So you can see this is the first 2 weeks of the run, and this is taken from Sinead's general medicine or medical relief pool, and I've just changed the names so to retain privacy for those who have had their leave approved already. So Sinead has the ability to approve 4 people off for full weeks, and then she's also got an additional reliever for the 2, if you're booking out 2-week blocks, because they're less risky in terms of relievers being able to cover after hours. This format that the advisors use allows them to auto-populate the calendar just below it. So if you are looking to book some leave across a run and you just want to see which weeks are available, perhaps you're planning a trip with some of your friends, the RMO advisors have available calendars that they can send you to show you at that point in time which weeks still have a lot of relief available and which may be booked up. And you can make your decisions from there. So prior to roster publication, your leave may get declined pending available relief. And there are a number of things that changes when we publish rosters. So if you are looking to apply for a week that's already very popular, school holidays, or maybe there's an exam on which we've blocked out, then it might get declined pending available relief, and the advisor will tell you that they'll review it after roster publication. What that means is that once the roster is published, we understand what shifts everybody's working and also where relief might be freed up. So we may have over allocations on a certain line, which means we won't be covering that person in the relief pool. An RMO who's previously been approved leave may have moved to a different service or a different DHB via a run swap, so their leave no longer requires cover. Or an RMO is on approved leave but is rostered to RDOs. So we've got relief built in because of the leave, and we've got relief built in to cover the RDOs. So again, that will free up some capacity. So once the roster is published a month prior to the start of the run, the advisors will start to build this full relief roster. And at that time, they'll also complete a check on who hasn't applied for leave or who has but hasn't had a lot approved. And we will prioritize those people. And then once that has been completed, they may send out an email to say, I still have full weeks available here. If you're keen for an extra week, please let me know. If at that point there is still no relief cover available for the dates that you have requested, they'll get back in contact with you, see if there are any alternative dates, or discuss a plan to escalate the application to your service manager at the time to see how the service would like to further that leave application and see whether it can be approved. Now, this process does take about a week after roster publication. So just bear with the advisors if they're a bit slow getting back to you, or in terms of you've requested additional leave and it's just been declined. That's because they're first prioritizing those that haven't had any leave approved, and then they'll get back to your application. Now, the leave abutting weekends. So this is a clause in both the NZRDA and the Stones contract, which states that if you're on leave on days immediately before or after a weekend, you cannot be required to work that weekend. So one thing to be mindful of is that further down in the clause, it does talk about Mondays and Fridays. So it has to be the Monday or the Friday that's approved in order to get the abutting weekend off. Now, I tried to talk somebody through this the other day, and with me not being in the office and such, it was really difficult to explain it. So I thought I'd give you a couple of scenarios of what it would look like. So if you look at scenario 1, the RMO is applying for a full week leave. So although they apply from Monday through to Friday, you automatically get both abutting weekends off, free of duty, which means that the first Saturday, Sunday, where the roster has them allocated to a long day, short day, that long day, short day will also be allocated to a reliever. Now, and you can see that the annual leave underlined on the Monday is the one that's causing that weekend to be free of duty. If the leave is approved after roster publication and you know that you have RDOs on the Thursday, Friday, if you're working on the NZRDA contract, that the leave for Thursday, Friday won't be approved because you've already got dates free of duty. So it will just be the 5 days from Saturday to Wednesday. It's key to note that leave cannot be deducted on weekends, and actually the payroll system completely prevents that. It can't deal with it. So in the second line, where leave is approved prior to roster publication, it will only be a 5-day deduction of your annual leave balance, so just 1 week, but it does give you a 9-day stretch off. And similarly with the full week leave after roster publication, it's just 3 days annual leave deduction, but you will also be removed from your Saturday, Sunday shift. Now with nights, which I know won't apply to most of you for at least another 6 months, it's even more complex. If you apply for the Monday, you come off all 3 night shifts because the Friday night, the majority of that shift falls on the Saturday, therefore it's included in the abutting weekend. But if you don't work the nights, you don't get the sleep days. So in this particular scenario, where you've applied for just the Monday and it's been approved, you will be required back on site Tuesday through to Friday, because the sleep days will now go to the reliever who's working the nights. If you apply for the Friday, the same clause applies, but because the majority of the Sunday night shift falls on the Monday, it's not part of the abutting weekend. So you will be required to work the Sunday night shift unless you have a specific discussion with your RMO advisor that you also get the Sunday night off. Now, it's really common to do that, so don't feel like you're burdening them, because actually for us, it's easier to roster all 3 nights and all 3 sleep days to a reliever rather than to try and cut the nights into parts. So if you'd like the Sunday off, that's not an issue, but neither party should assume that you're having the Sunday off, just because we have had vacancies specifically for that reason before. And obviously, if you want to extend the period off after your nights and you want to apply for annual leave on the Thursday, Friday, again, that's fine, and it will just extend your sleep days into a further week off, into the week off. When it comes to public holidays, this is where that either Monday or Friday is really important. So as you can see from example 3, if you apply for the Tuesday because you're rostered off on the public holiday Monday, that is not the Monday or Friday, that's immediately before or after the weekend. So the abutting weekend clause doesn't apply. So just be aware that when you're applying for weeks that include public holidays, that if you wish to have the whole 9-day stretch off, you have to apply for leave on the public holidays in order to meet that Monday or Friday clause. And I guess, Emily, this is where, because the public holidays for Christmas, New Year's of 2022, 2023 will fall on the Monday, Tuesday, if you informed us you were happy to work Christmas but wanted the Monday through to the following Sunday off, this is where we'd probably approve the Tuesday through to Sunday. And then once your roster is published and we're either clear that you're not working Christmas or we've had a specific discussion, we can then approve the Monday as well. Similarly to the weekends, annual leave is not deducted on the Monday. So whether you're rostered on or off, it will be a free day, especially in that Monday approved line here. So applying for that pattern won't actually cost you any annual leave days, because none of them are deductible. If we approve the Friday before roster publication and then you end up on an RDO, because that Friday is abutting the weekend, this person would actually have a 4-day stretch here, but it would cost them 1 annual leave day. Does that make sense? It's one that we get a lot of questions about, so I've kind of tried to explain it, but does anybody have any questions at this stage?
Could you explain the public holiday Monday, the last one again? So you said that you would, if you'd applied for, I don't understand. Could you just explain the last one again?
Yeah, so if you apply for that Monday, it's obviously not deducted because it's a public holiday. So once it comes around to that pay period, it's non-deductible. But you have to apply for the public holiday on the Monday, and it has to be approved in order to ensure that you get the abutting weekend free of duty.
Okay, but if you applied for the Monday to the Friday and the Monday included a public holiday,
yeah,
that was where you were saying that approved Tuesday to Friday and then wait for the Monday?
So that will be one of our strategies over the Christmas New Year's period to ensure that we're only approving one set of the actual holidays per person.
Oh, okay.
But for example, in this example here, if you wanted to take the week, then you would have to apply from Monday through to Friday, and we would have to approve Monday through to Friday in order to ensure that you have both abutting weekends free of duty.
But we can offer to work the weekends.
Yes, you're very welcome to offer to work the weekends. It would just be a discussion that would need to be had with your advisor after roster publication, so that everybody's clear and nobody's making assumptions on who's working and who's not. But if one of the advisors approves or declines something that you think is a little bit odd, it's likely for one of these reasons, because they can't cover an abutting weekend. But even before they know you're rostered, the assumption will be that you're rostered, and therefore we allocate a reliever. So if you're then not rostered, they'll offer the leave to someone else. But it just means that if you wanted to change that at all after roster publication, just have a discussion and make sure that both you and the advisor are really clear and are not making assumptions on anything.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, Hawani, did you have a question on behalf of the group?
No, I just wish I'd known all this earlier in my career.
Right, it's a new thing we're trying. Does anybody else have any questions at this stage? If you do have any questions, then feel free to email either me or one of the team, and we'll just talk you through how it would work for a particular scenario. So in terms of tips, I know that probably if you're a TI at the moment, in counties or anywhere else in the Auckland region, your current house officers will tell you leave is hard to get, which is true in some ways, but it is also a perception. So yes, it may be challenging to get specific dates, especially if they're in popular dates such as school holidays or exam periods. Or say we have a house of house officers who all want to go on the same skiing trip and they all happen to be rostered to medicine at the time. Well, as soon as those 6 people apply, that significantly reduces our ability to cover. So that does make it a little bit challenging sometimes, and will mean that certain dates are difficult to get approved. Also, 2 weeks in a row is most meaningful and recuperative. So we do try and approve 2 weeks in a row wherever possible. It's also great for our relievers, because while you're away for 2 weeks, they get to spend 2 weeks with a single team. They get to feel at home, follow patients through their journey, and there's a lot of education value for relievers. So ideally, and we would approve 2 weeks in a row for everyone, but if you do have specific dates in mind, it can be a little bit challenging to try and puzzle that in. So definitely apply early if you have set dates, and also let us know whether you're either flexible and want the 2 weeks because maybe you're allocated to psychiatry for that run and you don't really have an interest in psychiatry, so you're looking for a 2-week break in that run, and the others you'll deal with 1 week just to get a little bit of recuperation in, or you have specific occasion to apply for. Now, yes, leave is not hard to get, but it does fill up, so it's worth applying for some leave in each one of your runs. If you end up loving the run and, you know, we are in a sort of COVID lockdown where you can't really do anything and you really just want to stay on site, that's fine, you can cancel it and we'll accept the cancellation, no problem. But if you happen to ultimately be less keen on that run, or it's quite a high workload that maybe you hadn't envisioned, then at least you have something to look forward to. You can plan something. So it's worth having at least a week in each run specifically for that reason. As I said, let us know if you're flexible with dates and we'll come back and offer you some suitable periods. If you're flexible across all runs, then Katie and Sinead, the advisors, will work together to make sure that you've got blocks that are spaced out throughout your runs rather than, two really close together. And if you have a special occasion to apply for, there's no obligation to inform us of the reason for your leave, but we definitely do take it into consideration. And just be mindful that the leave kiosk is a generic system. It provides templated responses that the advisors cannot change. So if a decline email looks really blunt, that's not because that's who the advisor is, that's simply the system. So make sure you talk to your advisor if you're looking for more information or you have questions or you want to discuss something else. Because although some of the email communication from the leave kiosk is blunt, Katie and Sinead definitely aren't. So they'll be really happy to answer your questions and make sure that you have suitable periods booked. And I think that's kind of what I had at this stage. I'll just put the contact details for the RMO advisors up. If you guys have any further questions that you'd like to ask at this stage. Somebody asked the question of how soon before the run is the roster published? So the roster is normally published a minimum of a month prior to the start of the run. For Q1, it will actually be published on the 26th of November this year, just because the Christmas period, although in theory it's part of that month prior in terms of contractual obligation, it doesn't give us any time to prepare your rosters, the relief rosters and the daily things that we need to do. So it will actually be published on the 26th of November for that reason. If we need a particular weekend off to attend a wedding, for example, but don't need weekdays before or after that weekend off, how should we apply for leave? Do we just ask not to be rostered that weekend? That's a really good question. So I would recommend that you apply for leave for that weekend. Unfortunately, although lots of people ask us not to be rostered for a particular weekend, and that would make sense, we're unable to do that. So all rosters, all house officer rosters in the Auckland region are templated, and they're templated in order to be contractually compliant, but also to fit in with the on-call or on-take weekends for the team that you are allocated to. So we will always take somebody's team preference over their leave approvals. And then if they happen to be rostered for the weekend that you asked us not to be rostered for, that's where we would encourage you to apply for leave. So as soon as we've approved leave, that cannot be retracted whether you're working or not, which means that when we approve the leave, we are giving you that confidence that you will not have to work that weekend, regardless of who writes the roster or who's your advisor at the time. We give you that confidence that you can RSVP to that wedding and know that you'll be there. When can you expect to hear back on whether leave is approved? Is it always after the rosters come out? No. So for the relief cover that we guaranteed have available, we're approving leave applications now in the next couple of weeks. And if your leave has been declined and you get a decline notification, we will then review those declined leave applications after roster publication. So for every quarter, we do 2 cuts of leave and then go and offer out any remaining weeks that we have available, if we do. I'd say the run in which we're least likely to have additional leave available will be quarter 3. So if you have a run you're not going to enjoy for quarter 3, better plan your leave well in advance, because that tends to be the run in which we will also potentially carry vacancies if a run at all. If we applied for leave from Saturday through to the following Friday, is it the same days of leave we get if applied from Monday to Friday, as we get both weekends off? How does this affect payroll? So yes, if you apply from a Saturday through to the following Friday, so 7 days, you will automatically get the Saturday, Sunday after that Friday as well. So it will be extended to 9 days, which will be the same effect as to whether you applied for the Monday through to Friday and got both abutting weekends. In any scenario, no matter what is approved or what is approved, Monday through to Friday will always be just the weekdays that go through to payroll and are deducted. So whether you apply and are approved for Monday to Friday, Saturday to Friday, or Saturday through to the following Sunday, it's only a 5-day leave deduction. And that's obviously excluding any public holidays. So if that's a week with public holidays, it's potentially 4 or even 3 days annual leave deduction. Any other questions?
How far in advance do we have to request leave? Like say, I don't know, it's a Monday and we kind of have found out we've got something on the following like Friday. Like does it have to be like a long time in advance or?
So because we use relief pools to cover, and we have an obligation to provide relievers with their roster minimum 14 days in advance for their weekday duties and 28 days in advance for their weekend duties. In order for your leave application not to incur a cost by having to locum out shifts, it would need to be before that. If you have a very good reason for applying for the leave, we would take it to the service and discuss whether they would approve us to locum out the shifts. If we source cover that way, we'll approve the leave application anyway. If we can't source cover, then we'll help, try and figure out some alternative ways, whether that is swapping with somebody or maybe even swapping with a reliever to work a different weekend. So, the contract will state that obviously it's not your individual responsibility to source cover for your leave. There may be occasions where we're unable to approve the leave unless we swap a couple of shifts to ensure that the relievers aren't working above the MECA ratios. It's quite rare at a house officer level, but it does happen somewhat times, and it's just, it's us attempting to support you to get the leave that you have requested if we have no other means of approving it. But generally, if we have short notice relief available or are able to approve the leave while ensuring that your shifts are covered, we'll approve it. But ideally, the earlier the better. Any other questions? You have asked some really good ones. Oh yes, are leave applications that aren't a full week likely to be declined prior to roster publication? Yes, they are likely to be declined unless you provide us with specific reasoning, or you already have, a full week approved in that run and you have a specific reason to apply for a couple of days, then we will take that into consideration. But generally, we have delegated authority to approve the full weeks only, and would encourage people to apply for the 4 weeks because that's a better, meaningful and recuperative break across the run. The majority of you will be on NZ RDA contracts and all our rosters are Schedule 10 compliant. So from a fatigue management perspective, the RDOs will support you in getting to know your own fatigue levels and coping with that. Therefore, the full weeks off are deemed more restful and recuperative. I know that some people disagree on that, and that's everybody to their own, but that's the assumption that we apply. So the other 2 DHBs do have the same approach to leave. In general, some of the delegated authority may be a little bit different, but in terms of the tips and the way the rosters look and stuff, it's the same. So if you're sitting next to somebody who's going to Auckland and WDHB, these leave abutting weekends and such would definitely apply if they have any questions for you. And obviously, if you do think of any other questions, just feel free to ask away. And we're very happy to answer anything. If you want to have a look at the rosters or the relief rosters, then we're really transparent about it. So do come up and see us if you happen to be at counties or even after the start of your run. We all know that there's a perception out there that leave is really hard to get. And I guess we're hoping that by being transparent and talking about how it works and such, we can hopefully support you in getting the leave that you want and need across your first year here at counties. Yes, so there's a question, can we apply now for leave? Yep, absolutely. So as a upcoming employee, you have the same rights as anybody who's currently employed at counties. So you can apply for leave. You can apply for up to your 6 weeks of your annual entitlement for the next training year. And as you will all have been offered permanent employment in the Auckland region, you can also apply beyond the 2022 training year. So for those of you who are really organised and anybody planning to get married in 2023, you can submit those applications now. They will get declined pending allocation, but again, everything that we review at any given point is reviewed according to first come, first serve, and it holds on to your original application date. So I know there's already a couple of applications in the system for 2023 for weddings, and one super keen person who has just loaded leave applications for Christmas, New Year's from now until I think 2026. So I'm sure they'll get Christmas off at some point. Does the 6 weeks leave run from when we start on 17/1 till 16/1, or is it yearly based? So it will run according to your annual anniversary date, which I believe is actually the week before the 17th, so during orientation. So your leave will start to accrue as of orientation date, and it will accrue at 2.5 days per month. Now, when applying for leave, we don't necessarily take your accrual rate or your balance into consideration when we approve. So you are able to go into 5 days anticipated annual leave as well. So say you wanted to apply for a week just after, in the second week of your run, then you won't necessarily have accrued the balance, but we'll approve it and you'll take anticipated annual leave. So your balance will sit in a minus for a little bit, but other than you on your pay slips and us in our system, nobody can see that. So it will run, from the start of orientation week, and at the end of that year, you will have accrued 6 weeks and hopefully used 4 to 6 of those weeks. And then it will keep going from there at 2.5 days per month. Is there a way to see how much leave we've used, or do we have to keep track? It's a little bit challenging to view how much leave you've used, how much leave you've used and what's coming up, because RMOs apply through a separate system to other DHB employees, and that's because you'll be on a regionally rotating contract. So obviously, as the DHBs are set to become one employer of sorts next year, that may change. But at the moment, we can run reports on how much you've applied for and how much has been approved. So if you have lost track at any given point and you're not sure how much leave you have left or when you had leave approved for, you may have had multiple discussions about particular suitable weeks, then just email any of the advisors and we'll run a quick report and send that back to you. It's no hassle, it's 2 minutes. So anytime you'd want to see that, just let us know. And somebody has asked, if we use only 4 weeks in PGY1, can we potentially use 8 weeks in PGY2? Yes, that's correct. So your leave will continue to accrue throughout your RMO career in the Auckland region. If you do rotate at some point to a different DHB, you'll be able to take a year's entitlement or 6 weeks with you to your next DHB, and then you start accruing again. You can also choose to have it paid out. So we do have a couple of registrars, especially in the services, for example, that only Auckland City has, who have huge leave balances because a medical oncology registrar won't rotate anymore and they don't take much leave. They tend to take MEL. So they're sitting on huge leave balances and could probably take 3-4 months off in a single year without making much of a dent. So you'll continue to accrue and you can take 8 weeks in PGY2, or I guess 8 weeks would sort of be the max you could take in any 1 year, because then you're going to go over that 2 weeks per run, and even at a registrar level, we only approve 4 weeks per half-year slot. All right, well, if you don't have any other questions at this stage, as I said, if you log out and think of something in 5 minutes time, please just email us or call or drop by the unit. We're always happy to answer things. And I hope that's answered some questions for you as you try and plan what next year will look like.